I'm Helen King. I'm the Professor of Classical Studies at the Open University. So you may be surprised to find me here at the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. What I study is ancient medicine, diseases, theories, remedies. And I look at that in a much wider context, ideas about birth and death, about illness and pain, that we share with the people of the past because we're all human beings. Of course, there have been advances in the history of medicine. Things like the forceps, for example, which enabled difficult births to be successfully transacted. What happened was that you insert the forceps, you turn them to mimic the position of the baby's head in the birth canal, and then you can bring a birth to a successful conclusion. But of course, for many conditions we suffer from, various undiagnosed aches and pains, there's no technological solution. There's no magic pill. In our lives, the same things happen as happened to the Greeks and Romans, and the way in which they answered the big questions of life and death can be relevant to us even now. In the Classical Studies department, we work a lot with practitioners. What we normally mean by that are people who do drama or who write poetry, who draw on classical themes or remake classical plays. I work with practitioners in a rather different sense. I work with medical practitioners of various kinds. So, for example, I gave a lecture on the eve of the Royal College of Midwives conference one year, in which I talked about 18th century men midwives and their attempts to take over midwifery from women. I ran a conference in 2012 on telling tales of pregnancy and childbirth, which brought together practicing midwives with various academics from arts and humanities and social science backgrounds to talk about the way people make sense of what's happening to them by telling stories. And in 2013, I took part in a conference on narrative medicine at Ohio State, where I broadened out my ideas further into history of medicine to think about the contrast between anatomy, which makes sense of things by cutting them apart, and narrative, which weaves together events in the patient's life to help the patient make sense of what's happening to them. And now I've mentioned anatomy, what is the best way of learning about the human body? Over the history of medicine, human dissection hasn't been the foundation of medical education. It didn't really come in until the 16th century. Even the greatest doctor of them all, the 2nd century AD Galen, didn't do human dissection. He used animals, particularly goats and pigs. The use of animals in dissection can still be valuable for medical students today, especially if they're at a medical school where human dissection isn't practiced. I've taught medical students for the past 6 years at the Peninsula Medical and Dental School in Truro, where human dissection is not part of the curriculum. My students learn from observing the surface of the body, from computer simulations, from books, and from role play. Why? Because in contrast to learning from dissection, this is thought to make them more empathetic, more able to see the person behind the symptoms. They make art, they write poems, and they come to understand how we all need to tell stories. Back in the 2nd century AD, the orator Elias Aristides talked about illness as a difficult journey on a stormy sea. And he wrote that every day and every night has its story, if only someone could write it. Through studying the past, medical students now can understand how important are the connections that narrative makes. Even the process of learning the history of medicine makes them better practitioners, because they learn that history doesn't go in a straight line from then to now, from ignorance to total understanding. We don't have all the answers, but understanding the past and understanding the important role that narrative plays in constructing meaning for the patient helps medical students to become better doctors.